Chosen one, lock your attention on this message right now. That discomfort rising in your chest, do not push it down. Let it stay. Because what I am about to say is not going to feel gentle, and that is exactly the point. The enemy is working overtime right now for one reason and one reason only. He knows that if you hear this truth today, the real truth, not the comfortable version, everything he has built against you collapses. It all shifts in the next 24 hours. The confusion, the stagnation, the cycle of almost. But here is the part that matters. The part most people are not ready to receive. It does not shift because the universe finally decided to be kind to you. It shifts because you are about to stop lying to yourself. Think back to that moment this week when someone told you something hard, or when life showed you something you did not want to see, and you found a reason to dismiss it. You called it negativity. You called it an attack on your peace. You wrapped yourself in the language of protection and used it to avoid the very mirror that could have set you free. You did not know it then, but that moment of avoidance was the wall standing between you and everything you have been praying for. You did not fail, but you have been comfortable. And comfort, chosen one, has been the enemy dressed in silk. You did not stumble onto this message. The algorithm did not recommend this to you. The Holy Spirit brought you here. This is a divine appointment set before the foundations of the earth, and you are standing at a threshold that demands something of you, not performance, not more prayer without action, but honesty. Stay until the very last second of this message, because in the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the specific truth the enemy has been hiding behind your peace and positivity. I am going to walk you through the exact pattern that has been keeping your breakthrough on hold, not because you are cursed, but because you have been choosing familiarity over transformation. And at the end, I am going to give you the declaration that seals this season of avoidance shut permanently. Do not click away. Your future self is not asking you to stay. They are begging you, because if you leave now, you walk back into the same week you just survived, and you call it God's timing when it was actually your fear. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere has not just been heavy, it has been strange. Like something is pressing down on every area of your life at once, and no matter how much you pray, journal, or confess scriptures, the weight does not lift. Maybe you have been doing everything right on the surface. Maybe you woke up yesterday and went through every spiritual discipline, every routine, every affirmation, and still felt hollow. Or maybe you were in a conversation this week where someone said something that landed in your chest like a stone, and instead of sitting with it, you changed the subject, scrolled your phone, or found 3 reasons why they were projecting. You feel suspended, like you are doing the right things but standing completely still, like God is silent, like the promise is real but somehow not for you, not yet, not now. And in that suspension, the enemy has started whispering a very specific lie. He is telling you that your discomfort is spiritual attack. He is telling you that the people who challenge you are toxic. He is telling you that protection of your peace means never allowing anything uncomfortable to reach you. He has taken the language of healing and weaponized it against your growth. He is replaying that moment when you walked away from a hard conversation and calling it wisdom. He is pointing to that choice you made to protect your feelings instead of confront the truth and calling it boundary setting. He is framing every mirror as an enemy and every challenge as an attack. And the blessing has not been delayed because of your enemies. It has been waiting on you to look at yourself without the filter. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Proverbs 27:6 says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." Listen to that. Faithful are the wounds, the things that have been cutting you lately, the hard truths landing in inconvenient places, the discomfort you have been running from. Those are not attacks. Those are the hands of God reaching through imperfect people, imperfect circumstances, and imperfect mirrors to show you what needs to be seen. The enemy is not the truth that makes you uncomfortable. The enemy is the comfort that keeps you blind. You are not in a cycle because you are cursed. You are in a cycle because every time you get close to the thing that would break it open, you choose comfort over confrontation, and you spiritualize the choice so it feels like obedience. The heaviness you feel is not punishment, it is pressure. It is the weight of a season that has been waiting, not for more faith, but for more honesty. It is the tension of a person standing at the edge of real transformation, terrified to take the step because the step requires them to admit something. You think the truth is your enemy right now. You think the harshness of this message is the attack. But let me reframe your reality right now. The harshness is the love. The wound is the healing. The discomfort pressing on your chest is not darkness closing in, it is light forcing its way through. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are being refined. And refinement has never felt like rest. Many are called, but few receive the instructions. If your spirit is burning right now, the Chosen One's blueprint holds the roadmap God designed specifically for people like you. It includes the complete audiobook, so you can carry this revelation with you wherever you go, plus a bonus ebook, Activating Your Prophet Mantle, for those who sense God is preparing them to speak with authority. Find it in the first pinned comment below, available for a limited time only. Now let's go deeper, because what most people don't understand is that the weight you've been carrying isn't just a burden. It's evidence. It's proof that something significant lives inside you, something that darkness recognized before you did. The enemy doesn't waste resources on ordinary. He doesn't assign heavy opposition to people who pose no threat. Think of it like a fortress. The most heavily guarded gates are always those protecting the most valuable treasure. The intensity of your warfare is not a sign that God forgot you. It's a sign that what's inside you is worth fighting over, a divine signal that you are a prize, a vessel destined for greatness. And until you see your struggle through that lens, you will keep misreading your own story, interpreting divine battles as personal failures instead of spiritual assignments. Think about Elijah. Here was a man who called down fire from heaven, a celestial conflagration that consumed the sacrifice and defied all natural explanation. A man who stood alone against 450 false prophets, a solitary sentinel against a sea of deception, and won, proving the singular power of the Most High. A man who moved in miracles that defied the natural order, parting rivers with a word and commanding the heavens. And yet, one threatening word from Jezebel, a venomous whisper from a queen steeped in sorcery, sent him running into the wilderness, collapsing under a broom tree, a man of monumental faith, reduced to begging God to let him die, not because he was weak in spirit or lacking in divine favor, but because he was exhausted in a way that victory alone cannot heal. He had poured everything out, a living sacrifice of his strength, his will, his very essence, and hadn't yet learned how to be refilled, how to draw from the wells of salvation, even in the moments of depletion. And God's response to him in that moment wasn't a rebuke for his despair. It wasn't a sermon on resilience. It was bread. It was water. It was rest. God met him in the collapse, in the raw vulnerability of his brokenness, before he gave him the commission. God's love, like a gentle dew, refreshed his parched soul before the next phase was revealed. And what's coming next in your own story may surprise you, because the pattern God used with Elijah, this tender care amidst the collapse, is the same pattern he's using with you right now, whispering promises of replenishment, even as you feel you have nothing left to give. You've been trying to perform your way into peace, like an actor perpetually on stage, believing your worth is tied to your output. You've been trying to pray yourself out of an exhaustion that actually requires stillness, a sacred silence where the soul can hear the gentle whisper of the Spirit. There is a profound difference between spiritual discipline and spiritual striving, and most chosen people confuse the two, mistaking the frantic paddling of a drowning man for the steady stroke of a seasoned sailor. Discipline is rooted in identity, in the unshakable knowledge of who you are in Christ. Striving is rooted in fear, in the desperate attempt to prove your worth and earn what has already been freely given. And if you've been showing up in your calling with a grinding, white-knuckle desperation, doing the work, pushing the limits, but losing yourself in the relentless pursuit that is not consecration, that is survival mode, wearing a spiritual costume, a beautifully adorned mask, hiding a soul running on fumes. And God is not calling you to survive. He is calling you to inhabit, to actually live inside the life He's building for you, to feel the warmth of His presence, to taste the sweetness of His purpose, not just chase after it from a distance like a mirage in the desert. But here's where it goes deeper, into the hidden chambers of the heart. The reason so many chosen people stay in survival mode isn't laziness. It isn't a lack of faith, though it can manifest as such. It's because somewhere early in their journey, perhaps in the crucible of childhood or the sharp edges of early adulthood, they made an unconscious agreement. Maybe it was the home you grew up in, where love felt conditional, a fragile currency you had to constantly earn, where safety was never guaranteed, leaving you with a perpetual sense of precariousness. Maybe it was the betrayal that came from someone who was supposed to protect you, a trusted shepherd who instead led you into the wolf's den and didn't. Maybe it was the rejection that arrived right when you were most vulnerable, a raw nerve exposed to the harsh winds of criticism, right when you had stepped out in faith, right when you thought this time it would be different. This time you would be seen and accepted. And in that moment, without realizing it, you made an agreement with a lie, a subterranean contract signed in the ink of pain. The lie said, "I have to keep moving or I'll be left behind," a frantic scramble against an imagined abandonment. The lie said, "Rest is risk," a dangerous indulgence that invites disaster. The lie said, "If I stop striving, I'll lose everything I've built," a castle of achievements constructed on the shifting sands of self-effort. And that agreement has been running in the background of your life ever since, a silent program, a ghost in the machine quietly sabotaging your seasons of blessing, your relationships, your ability to receive what God is actually trying to give you, building invisible barriers around the very gifts He longs to bestow. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share next is the part that breaks the cycle, the key that unlocks the chains forged in those early agreements. Agreements are not broken by willpower. You cannot simply muscle your way out of a deeply ingrained operating system. They are broken by revelation, by a divine illumination that exposes the lie for what it is. You cannot white-knuckle your way out of a belief system that was wired into you by pain, like trying to untangle a knot with brute force. What breaks the agreement is seeing it clearly, naming it, exposing it, pulling it out of the shadows where it's been operating without your permission, like bringing a hidden disease into the light for healing. Joseph didn't just endure the pit and the prison, those dark, desolate landscapes of injustice. He didn't just survive the years of delay and betrayal, the slow erosion of hope by a relentless current of misfortune. He came out of that process with clarity about the pattern, with an understanding that even the darkest chapters were part of a larger narrative authored by God. And when he finally stood before his brothers, the very people who sold him into slavery, who reveled in his suffering, he didn't perform forgiveness, a hollow echo of reconciliation. He spoke it from a place of genuine revelation, a deep knowing that transcended personal hurt. He said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." That's not a man who is still living under the agreement of victimhood. That is a man who has seen the full picture, the divine tapestry woven from threads of pain and purpose, and has chosen to stand in it, embracing the redemptive arc of his story. And this leads us to something most people miss entirely, a crucial aspect of kingdom economics. Forgiveness in the kingdom is not primarily about the person who hurt you, though that is a significant outcome. It is about dismantling the spiritual architecture that their offense built inside of you. Every wound that was never fully healed became a room in your interior world, a partitioned space within your soul. And in that room, there are beliefs that took root, like invasive weeds. There are reflexes, automatic responses honed by trauma. There are patterns of behavior that made sense in the moment of pain, a survival mechanism that was necessary then, but are now actively working against your breakthrough, like wearing outdated software that crashes the system. You've been trying to move forward while secretly still living in those rooms, making decisions from a place of scarcity and fear, still filtering your relationships through the distorted lens of past hurts, still hearing God's voice through the static of what happened in them, mistaking his voice for the echo of your pain. And coming up, the hidden thing that most chosen people never confront, because confronting it would require them to completely relinquish the one thing they thought was keeping them safe, the armor that became a prison. Because here's what nobody tells you about the chosen path, the stark reality that often follows great breakthrough. The thing that protected you in the wilderness will eventually become the thing that limits you in the palace. The guardedness that kept your heart intact through years of rejection becomes isolation when you're finally surrounded by people God actually placed there for covenant, for connection, for shared purpose. The self-sufficiency that helped you survive when no one showed up becomes a formidable wall that keeps God's provision from landing, preventing the very blessings he's orchestrated for you. The independence that made you resilient, a badge of honor in times of trial, becomes pride disguised as discernment, a subtle barrier that keeps you from truly receiving from others and from him. And the worst part is that it doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like wisdom. It feels like protection. It feels like the most reasonable, spiritually sound version of yourself, a seasoned warrior who knows how to navigate the dangers. But if you're honest, if you are truly, quietly honest right now, in the sanctuary of your own soul, you know that the wall is still up. And you know that things that should be able to reach you, divine appointments, loving connections, profound insights, aren't reaching you. Not because God isn't sending them, showering you with opportunities, but because the architecture of survival is still active, a phantom defense system that cannot distinguish between what hurt you and what was sent to heal you, between a genuine threat and a divine outstretched hand. This is where the real transformation begins, the sacred alchemy of the soul, because this is the layer that requires the most courage. Not the courage to step out in ministry, to speak before crowds, or to walk away from what no longer serves you, though those are significant acts of bravery. The deepest courage required of the chosen is the courage to be found, to be known, to lower the walls that protected you, to disarm yourself, and trust that what's on the other side is not another wound waiting to strike, but an open hand extended in love and welcome. God is not asking you to be naive, to forget the lessons learned in the crucible of your past. He's not asking you to forget what the fire felt like, the sting of the flames. He's asking you to believe that he is more sovereign than your history, that his power eclipses the magnitude of your pain, that his plan is bigger than the sum of your disappointments, a grand design that incorporates every setback. That the very places where you were broken are the exact locations where he intends to build something magnificent, something that couldn't have been built anywhere else, something stronger and more beautiful precisely because it emerged from the fragments. But let me challenge you with something that may be the most confronting thing in this entire message, a truth that can shake the foundations of our understanding. The delay you've been calling waiting on God, some of it is Him. His timing is real. His preparation is intentional, like a skilled sculptor carefully chiseling away excess material. But some of what you've been calling waiting is actually withholding. You have been holding back a part of yourself that He's been asking for, a sacred offering you've kept hidden. There is an area of your life you already know what it is, that quiet whisper in your spirit, that persistent nudge where you have given God everything except that one thing. The dream you buried because it hurt too much to keep hoping for. A fragile seedling left in the frozen earth. The relationship you closed off because vulnerability felt like a doorway to more pain. A guarded heart refusing entry. The calling you've been half-stepping into because full commitment would mean you could fully fail, and you're not sure your faith is strong enough to survive that ultimate exposure. And heaven has been waiting not because God needs your permission, for His will is supreme, but because He gave you a will, a sacred gift of free choice. And He will not override it. He will knock. He will speak through the thunder and the whisper. He will send signs and witnesses and confirming words, a chorus of divine encouragement. But He will not take what you haven't laid down, what you haven't willingly offered on the altar of surrender. The invitation has been standing, the door ajar. The question is whether you will finally open the door all the way, ushering in the fullness of His purpose. And here's what you didn't expect to hear, a revelation that shifts the perspective entirely. The final barrier between you and the fullness of what God has prepared is not the enemy. It never was. The enemy is a defeated force operating on borrowed time, a spent bullet whose power is illusionary, and he knows it. The final barrier is your own unbelief, not the obvious kind, not the kind that shouts defiantly, "I don't believe in God." It's the subtle, insidious kind, the kind that whispers, "I believe God can do it for others, but I'm not sure He'll do it for me." A quiet exemption carved out of personal doubt, the kind that nods at every promise in Scripture but quietly exempts itself from its application, a mental parenthesis around its own reality. The kind that praises breakthroughs in other people's lives with genuine joy, while privately accepting delay as a permanent address, a settled resident in the land of someday. That is the agreement that must be broken today, not tomorrow. Not after things get better, after the circumstances miraculously shift. Today, in this moment, you have to decide whether you are going to keep living as someone who times might times be chosen, perpetually on the threshold, or step fully into the truth that you times are times chosen, embracing the magnificent identity God has already bestowed. Because you are not on the edge of your breakthrough. You are in the middle of your becoming, a glorious unfolding that is already in progress. And the reason it's been so hard, so long, so costly, so confusing, is not because God is withholding, or because He's forgotten you, or because He's playing games with your heart. It's because what He's building through you requires a foundation that cannot be rushed, a bedrock of character forged in the fires of adversity. Shallow foundations can't hold tall structures. They crumble under the weight of glory. And what He's preparing to place on your life is so significant, so world-altering, that the preparation had to match the assignment. The weight of the glory coming requires the depth of the roots that were forged in your suffering, drawing strength from the very soil of your trials. What you thought was punishment was preparation. What you called abandonment was actually isolation, the sacred, intentional solitude that God uses to separate the chosen, to refine their focus, to deepen their intimacy with Him before He reveals them to the world in all their appointed glory. Place your hand on your heart right now and speak this over yourself, letting the words resonate deep within your soul. I release every agreement I made with limitation, every pact with perceived inadequacy. I release every lie that told me I was too broken, too late, too damaged, or too far gone to ever be truly used or loved. I release the walls I built to survive, the defenses that became my prison, and I trust God to guard what those walls were protecting. Knowing His protection is far superior, I break agreement with the belief that delay is my destiny, that my story is one of perpetual waiting. I step out of survival mode and into the full inhabitation of my divine calling and purpose. I receive the fullness of what heaven has prepared for me, not because I've earned it through sheer effort or suffering, but because I am chosen, I am covered by His grace, and I am eternally called. I open every closed room within my heart, dismantling the partitions of past pain. I lower every wall of defense, inviting His love and truth to flood in. And I declare that from this moment forward, I am available, fully and completely available, to be known, to be used, and to be transformed by a God who has never once taken His eyes off me, whose gaze has always been fixed on me with love and purpose. My breakthrough is not coming. It is already here, unfolding in this very moment. And I walk forward, stepping into the full, radiant truth of who I am in Him. If this message landed in your spirit today, if it resonated with the deepest parts of your being, don't scroll past it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is carrying a similar weight, someone who needs to know they are not alone. Drop a word in the comments, a declaration, a confirmation, a prayer, because your testimony is someone else's turning point, a beacon of hope in their own journey. And if you want to go even deeper, if you feel the pull to understand God's unique blueprint for your life, the link in the first pinned comment is waiting for you, a gateway to further revelation. This is your season. Don't waste it in hesitation, in the lingering shadows of doubt. Step into the light of your calling,